Hi, I'm Jane and I'm going to show you how to give your insulin injections. Taking insulin for the first time can seem quite scary, and that's understandable, but you will become more confident with time, and your diabetes team are here to support you. There are lots of different insulins available, and your doctor will have thought about which insulin is best for you at this time. The insulin comes in a pen type device similar to this, and the insulin is already in the pen. Before you give your insulin injection, it's really important to wash your hands, and it's important to check your pen to make sure you've got the right insulin and that it's in date. All pens will have the expiry date written on them. Some insulins are cloudy to look at. If you are on one of these cloudy insulins, you need to ensure that it is thoroughly mixed before you give your insulin injection, as when it's left to stand, it will separate out into a powder and a clear fluid. In order to mix it properly, what we advise you to do is to tip the pen up and down about 10 times, followed by 10 rolls of the pen. You would then be ready to give your injection. In order to use the insulin pen, you have to attach a needle which comes separately. Take the lid off of the pen and tear the paper off of the top of the needle. Screw the needle onto the end of the pen and turn it until you can turn it no more. Take off the outer protective plastic covering to the needle and keep that, because that comes in useful later. And some needles will have an inner protective cap, as this one does. Take that off and you can throw that away. Insulin is measured in units, and your doctor will have decided how many units you need to take. You turn the dial on the end of the pen to the number of units you are going to take. Most insulin pens contain 300 units of insulin, so one insulin pen is going to last you several days, possibly a couple of weeks, depending on the dose of insulin you are taking. Before you give your actual insulin dose, you need to do what we refer to as priming. Turn the dial on the pen to the number 2. Hold the insulin pen with the needle pointing upwards and push the dial in until you can push no more. You are looking to see if there is a bead of insulin coming out of the end of the needle. If that happens, then you are then ready to dial up your insulin dose and give your injection. If when you prime your insulin pen, you do not see any insulin coming out of the needle, simply turn to the number 2 again and repeat the process until you do see some insulin coming out. So now you need to decide where you're going to give your insulin injection. There are 3 main sites: the tummy, not too near the tummy button, but really anywhere across the lower tummy region is fine, the upper outer thigh, or your bum. It's really important to change the place that you give your injection each time. And the reason for that is that if we continue to inject in the same small area over and over again, it can lead to the formation of lumps, and this will interfere with the absorption of the insulin and ultimately can affect the blood glucose control. When you come to give your injection, you need to turn the dial on the end of the pen to the number of units that you've been advised to give. So if I was to give 10 units, I would turn the dial to the number 10. You're then ready to give your injection. Take the pen device and put the needle into the skin at an angle of 90 degrees or a right angle. Push the needle in until you can push it in no further. Then you need to push onto the end of the pen, push in until you can push no further, and that will give the insulin. Once you've done that, you need to count to 10 before you take the needle out of the skin. You will find that as you give the injection, the dial on the end of the pen will automatically turn down to 0, ready for your next injection. Once you've done your injection, it's really important to dispose of your needles safely. In order to get the needle off of the pen, this is where the protective covering that you saved earlier on will come in handy, because you can use that as a key to unscrew the needle from the end of the pen. What you then need to do is to dispose of that needle in a sharps bin. These sharps bin are available on prescription, so you will get that along with all of your other items to manage your diabetes with from your GP on repeat prescription. You place the needle into the sharps bin and job done. It's important to use a new needle each time you inject. Take the needle off of the pen when you've done your injection and dispose of it safely in the sharps bin, as we've already discussed. Don't attach a new needle to the pen until you're about to give your next injection. Insulin needs to be stored safely. The insulin pen that you are currently using is fine to be kept out of the fridge. Room temperature is a good temperature for this insulin. It's important to ensure it doesn't get too hot or too cold, so think about where you are keeping it. It would not be good to keep it near the radiator or on the window ledge in full sunlight. Spare insulin needs to be kept in the fridge. It's important, however, to put it somewhere where it is not going to get frozen. We're going to talk about hypoglycemia or hypos. This is when the blood glucose level falls below 4. It's something that you are likely to experience from time to time. It's not something you should be particularly worried about, but it is something that you should be prepared for. Hypos happen when we don't get the balance quite right between the insulin you're taking, the food you're eating, and the activity that you're doing. If you are to experience a hypo, then you are likely to get some symptoms. These include hunger, feeling lightheaded or dizzy, shaking, sweating, tingling lips. You might look pale. You might be behaving out of character. You might lack concentration. If you suspect you are hypo, you need to do a blood glucose test ideally to confirm that you are. Remember, a hypo is when the blood glucose level is below 4. So how do we treat a hypo? Well, first of all, you need to treat it straight away. And you need to treat it with something that's going to work really quickly. For example, 200 ml of orange juice. There are other alternatives that you can use also. Once you have taken your orange juice, for example, you then need to wait 5 to 10 minutes for that to work. In other words, for it to bring the blood glucose level back up. After that time, you need to recheck your blood glucose level. Remember to wash your hands before you do so to ensure that it has come back up above 4. If it hasn't come back up above 4 at the time you retest, you need to take the same amount of treatment again. For example, another 200 ml of orange juice. Again, you need to wait a further 10 minutes before you recheck to make sure that that has worked. Once the blood glucose level has come back up above 4, you need to think about when you're going to next have something to eat. If you're about to have your meal, fine, go ahead and have your meal. If it's going to be a long time before you are next due to eat, so if the hypo, for example, has happened in the middle of the night, it will be very sensible to go and get a snack, for example, a piece of toast. This will ensure the blood glucose levels stay up until you next have a meal. If you find you're having more than 2 hypos a week, it's important to contact your healthcare professional that helps you look after your diabetes, as it's possible that your insulin treatment will need adjusting. What about driving? Is it okay to drive? Yes, it's fine to drive, but there are some rules that have to be stuck to. It's important that you inform the DVLA that you are on insulin. You also need to inform your insurance company. Before you set off on a journey, you need to check your blood glucose level to ensure that you are safe to drive. The blood glucose needs to be above 5 to be considered safe to drive. You should not be behind the wheel of a car for longer than 2 hours since the last blood glucose test. If you are going to be going on a long journey, it is important therefore to stop every 2 hours, check the blood glucose level to ensure it is still above 5. If you find the blood glucose level is not above 5 before you set off, you will need to have a snack. You must not set off in the car until the blood glucose level has been rechecked and has risen above 5. So I hope you've found this helpful. Please don't struggle. If you have any questions, ring the diabetes nurse helpline on 0116 258 4919 and the nurses will be very happy to support you.